We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they use to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Pallatroni. Welcome to another episode of The Standard. I am your host, Chris Pallatroni, and today's guest is Aujile Riley, or better known as Coach Aujile. She is a mindset and weight loss counselor. She has a master's degree in counseling psychology and has worked in the mental health field for more than a decade. She is the CEO of Eat Cleanish, and she helps women lose weight and keep it off by focusing on the mental aspects of weight loss. She is an entrepreneur, a mom, a wife, and as you'll see, a lover of all things purple. This was a really fun episode. I've known Aujile for a few years now, and I was really excited to do some research and learn a little bit more about her background. So in the beginning of the episode, we definitely take a dive into her and her background, how she got into weight loss. She talks a little bit about her personal journey of losing over 100 pounds in 2018 and how she's kept that off and how that sort of transitioned her from the mental health field into coaching, which I think is just a really natural thing to go from a counseling mental health area into coaching people in weight loss. We talk about her best habit and why self-prioritization is so important. As she says, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so we talk a lot about that and sort of oscillate a little bit in and out of both her personal habit and then also talk a little bit about coaching. Then we dive into her best mindset, progress over perfection, and why that's so important to her at this stage in her life. And then we finish off the episode talking about sort of her wish for the world and how self-improvement and development could really have a ripple effect of positivity for all of us. As you'll hear in this episode, Aujile is so fun. If you get a chance to watch this on YouTube, you'll just see she's got a very infectious personality, someone very easy to like, and someone who's just very real, which I really appreciated. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Coach Aujile. Well, I didn't look at your answers. I like to be surprised with this stuff, but I feel like I know a fair amount about you, but I feel like I want you to take a couple of minutes, and if you can, give the listeners just a little bit of background on who Aujile is and also what you do as a profession, because I think that will sort of set the backdrop to where we're going to take this conversation.
Okay. Yeah, that works. I a little bit about me. I am a wife. I am a mother. I am currently hailing from Ohio, where it is not warm at all. I am also a mindset and weight loss counselor, and we got there because of my own personal story. So I've lost over 100 pounds naturally. I've been able to keep the weight off for more than 4 years. My background is in mental health. I have been a mental health therapist with over 10 years experience. So I've been kind of in the mental health game for quite some time. That is my passion, my heart. And now I run a coaching business known as Eat Cleanish. And that is designed to help other people lose weight practically and sustainably.
Nice. And you have correct me if I'm wrong, I think I read somewhere you have a master's degree, right, in counseling psychology, if I got that right.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Now
I
this
do.
this was prior to Eat Cleanish, right? Like this was sort of where you started off in terms of professionally. Am I getting that right?
Exactly, exactly. So in terms of my professional background, I did mental health therapy, I did dual diagnosis therapy, so people that struggle with drug and alcohol as well as mental health issues.
Yeah.
I've done couples therapy, I've done grief therapy, like all pretty much the gambit when it comes to therapy is pretty much the majority of my background.
Gotcha. So you got this master's degree, you did all this
Mhm.
different types of counseling, and then your 32nd birthday hit.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that. And I think what I'm so fascinated about, and I couldn't find this out. I mean, when I read and I listened to some of the clips that you were in, and even some of the podcasts, it was very much like this was a very defining moment for you. So I got a couple questions I want to ask around that. But what happened June of 2018, right?
Yes, June 14th, 2018. So that is my birthday. It was my 32nd birthday, and I found myself at the highest weight of my life, which is 289 pounds, and I'm 5'3", so I'm not very tall at all. And my weight creeped up. It's not like I woke up one day and suddenly had gained all this weight. It was creeping up, but as my birthday was kind of coming around, the bend, and I was thinking about my life, thinking about where I was, thinking about life satisfaction. At that time, I was a new mother. So my son was going on 1 years old. He was very active, running around. And I was like, something has to change. Like, I'm just not happy. I wasn't happy with who I saw in the mirror. I wasn't happy with, I didn't feel like I was operating at my highest potential. So I said, something's got to change. I got to take control.
All right, so I want to focus on this because you know better than I. So many people feel the same way, and you don't have to be over 100 pounds overweight. I mean, some people are more than that, some people are less than that. But I think the idea is you're just not happy with where you're at. Was this the first time in your life that you had those feelings?
Probably not. If I think back, I'm sure there were other times where I was displeased. I think that the trend when I think about my life is that when I get to a certain place of displeasure, when I get to a certain place of being uncomfortable, I do something about it. Like, I take action. And it takes a while. So it's not like as soon as I get uncomfortable, I take action. But it kind of gets to a point where, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You just like and something has to change. Your options are either to continue how it is or change it. And sometimes continuing as it is no longer an option.
So this is what I couldn't find in all the research I was doing. Why this moment? Like what? Because I mean, like I get it. Like we all have these things, and whether we're talking about weight loss, you and me both know. Like sometimes it's your finances, sometimes it's where you live, sometimes it's the relationship you're in. It's just this idea of I'm not happy with something in my life. But I mean, you're a counselor. That in itself
Mhm.
does not elicit change. There's a lot of people that probably reach out to you. They're like, I'm fed up, and then you work with them, and you realize that they're not quite there yet. So like for
Mhm.
you, like why this day? Like why did you make a commitment to then change? Because you'd sort of dabbled with this before. I mean, I read you tried a lot of specifically with weight, you tried all these different, I guess you could call it diets and things, and they just didn't work. But why this time?
I think it was a combination of kind of a coming of age type of thing, right? So like I was in my early 30s, and my very early 30s like went by like a blur. Because I got married when I was 30. I had my first child when I was 31. Like it was like kind of those it was so many things happening, like event after event or milestone after milestone. And then once those milestones kind of settled down and I stopped and I was like, wait a minute. Like I'm not this isn't how I wanted things to be at this point in my life. Things were going great in terms of my career. I mean, from the outside looking in, honestly, my life was amazing. And even when I look at the things that I had, I'm still very, very grateful. Like, I have an amazing husband. I have wonderful kids. Career is going well, all of those things. But even despite all of those things from the outside, on the inside, I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't happy and I didn't feel like I was in control of my life. Like I kind of felt like I was kind of coasting as life kind of happened to me. And that's not a comfortable place to be.
So what was the biggest change? I mean, I think I read you hired a coach, but
Mhm.
what were like the biggest, I guess, foundational steps that you took to make this change stick?
Yeah. So I did hire a coach, and that coach helped me clean up my eating as well as helped me get back in the habit of exercising. The unfortunate thing is like it was kind of on the extreme side of things,
Mhm.
which I later realized that like it wasn't sustainable. Like the methods that I was being taught wasn't very sustainable, but it was enough to get me started. It was enough to get me motivated again. It was enough. Another part of the coaching program I was a part of is community, and I realized that the community piece was a big piece that I was kind of lacking just in life. I had friends, I had family, people I can talk to, but not necessarily similarly positioned people. And I feel like that in itself, kind of that access to community was really one of the things that was really, really helpful and groundbreaking for me.
And so when you say community, these were people going through a weight loss journey as well? at least specific to this.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. So other women that were also going through a weight loss journey, some of which have been, fighting with weight loss their entire lives. And we were kind of motivating each other and pushing each other and talking to each other. This is all in an online community. And it was really, really helpful to know that I wasn't alone, that there were other people kind of experiencing this too, to have other people celebrate when I succeed, to have other people, rub my back and encourage me when I'm struggling. Like that was really a key piece for me.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you like what the effects of that community are, but you sort of nailed it right there. And I think the biggest one that I hear about, regardless of the situation, is the fact that you're not alone. This isn't specific to you. I mean, it's your journey, but like this is something that lots of people struggle with, which obviously I don't know if there's comfort in that, but clearly it sort of helps you realize that yeah, there's other people that maybe you can like lean on for guidance and whatnot. The reason I wanted to focus on that so much, and we'll dive into your habit and mindset, is there's just so many people that are at a point and they can't connect the dot. And I'm curious, I want to dive a little bit into your coaching. So I guess a couple questions I have on your coaching is, did you start coaching and become a mindset and weight counselor after your 32nd birthday? Was it after that?
Yes. So this is after I lost, like I didn't start coaching until after I had already lost 100 pounds.
Okay.
Coaching honestly wasn't even on my radar until other people that followed me would ask, like, "Do you coach?" I'm like, "I don't even know what that means, like,
Yeah.
what that would look like." So it wasn't really anything that I entertained initially, but the more and more people started asking me, I started looking into it, and I'm like, "Okay, like I can teach people what I did and kind of walk them along that journey."
Okay, got you. So you started this coaching. You had lost 100 pounds. It's been 4 plus years, and then where did Clean Eatish come in? Like, as you started that company as well. When did you start that?
Yeah, so Eat Cleanish came about 2 years, little over 2 years ago now.
Okay, of
And I started that because I heard, like, so when people hear that I lose weight, the very first thing they want to know is how you did it, right?
course.
And the assumptions are wild. Like people assume that, I spent my entire life in the gym, that, I was there from wake to sleep. People also assume that, I don't eat carbs. People assume that, I'm a vegetarian. People like all
Mm,
sorts of kind of assumptions. And I realized that people don't realize that you can lose weight and keep it off and live a healthy life without extremes. Like you don't have to do all that. It's not required. It can be very simple. We have a tendency of complicating weight loss. So I kind of set out on a mission to make this as simple as possible and to show people that it's practical, even for someone like me who, has kids to look after, who has, a husband to tend to, who has a career, and now I'm an entrepreneur. Like even with my busy life, this is still something that is practical and still something that is possible for everybody to do.
Well, I think that's probably why your story resonates with so many. Is there's so many women that are wives and mothers, and I don't know if this is your personality. I think of my wife a little bit more of a people pleaser. So a
Mhm.
tendency to put yourself and your own self care needs on the back burner, and sort of embed yourself in like how do I help other people, which obviously there's a cost associated with that. I'm curious, like when you've coached all these women, what has been like the most surprising thing for you? Because I think you've helped several hundred women. What is the most surprising thing that you've learned about coaching people?
I'd probably say the most surprising thing that I've realized is that weight loss is not most people's primary issue. It's actually a symptom of a bigger problem. Like the people struggles with weight. And that's one of the biggest things that I realize is that it's not just about the physical. It's so much more mental, and people don't realize that. So being able to kind of highlight that for them and say, like, it's not that you're doing something wrong. We just need to approach this another way. We need to think about this another way, and that kind of just opens things up for people. So that's, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned, or the most surprising thing, is that it's about so much more than the physical, and it's always a deeper issue.
What I find so interesting, and I think you're the third person I've had on that I've had, maybe the fourth person I've had that, and I've had pretty significant weight transformation journeys. I had one lady that had lost 100 pounds twice. I think Jeanne Michelle. I think you follow her. And I even had a gentleman on, and it's so interesting because when you see somebody, there's such a fascination when you see somebody before and after, right? And you see like, wow, like look at the physical transformation. And to your point just a second ago, anybody that's gone through a transformation, and I would even say maybe like 30 pounds, like anything 30 pounds and above, maybe, they'll all say the same thing, which is the mental transformation is so much more profound. And I think for somebody on the outside looking in, that is almost inconceivable of like, what do you mean? Like, I'm just trying to shed some pounds. What do you mean there's a mental shift? And it's almost, I don't know. Like, how would you, with somebody looking in, desperate to lose the weight, and they hear you say the words, it's more mental than physical. Like, how do you try to reconcile their disbelief or their inability to sort of grasp that they have to make a mental shift? Because obviously, and you being in the mental health space for so long, mental health is so challenging because you just don't see it, unless you can see the physical issues that are coming from mental health. It's really challenging when you don't get to see a mental health issue. So how would you explain to somebody that it is more mental than physical when they're outside looking in, they want to lose this weight, and they're just like, they don't understand that it has to be a mental shift before a physical shift?
Yeah, so that's challenging. That is very, very challenging, and that's one of the biggest challenges that I've kind of faced as a coach and in this profession. And one thing that I've kind of come to start doing is I no longer like I show people, but I no longer try to convince people that it's meant more mental than physical because you have to arrive at a place on your own that you're like something. What I'm doing isn't working. What I'm doing isn't working and I'm open to something else. Now, once they say that, they're open to something else, then that allows me to come in and say, okay, well, you've tried this many times. And that's another thing that's important to mention is that the people that I work with primarily are people who have, done this weight loss thing a million and one times. Maybe they've succeeded and gained the weight back. Maybe they haven't succeeded at all. So kind of they know this. They aren't new to weight loss. They aren't new to this whole concept. So a lot of times when they're already in that position, it's not hard to just say like, again, you've had the strategy already. You've tried 18 different strategies, and you haven't been able to be successful long term on these strategies. So why don't we take a moment and look a little bit deeper, and and go beyond the let me exercise more and let me eat better. Let's go a little bit beyond that.
Last question I got on this, it just struck me that your background, in counseling has to have like just profound like effects on your ability to coach people. Like I know you said you're new to coaching, and you sort of like leaned into it, but I know coaching and counseling there's differences, but it just feels like your ability to effectively navigate counseling situations really sets you up for success as a coach, especially in the mental health space. And not that weight loss is completely mental health, but let's be honest, everything's mental health. So it
Yeah.
just feels like you really set yourself up for success there, not really knowing it as you headed into a coach. Would you agree with that?
100%. I would 100% agree that everything kind of came together unexpectedly for me, but it did come together and it's for the betterment of my client.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I wanted to focus on that because, like so many other people that are on the podcast, their profession usually stem from something in their personal life. At least for this first season, I've interviewed a lot of coaches in nutrition and fitness, and it usually comes to I had this happen to me, thus I became a coach. So I wanted to create that backdrop before we dived into your habits. So we'll start with a habit, and then we'll pivot over to a mindset. So, is there one particular habit at this stage in your life that really serves your mental health, your well-being, your overall success?
Yes. And I think that it's something that most people don't think of as a habit, but I would say the habit of self prioritization.
Hmm, okay.
I call it a habit because it's something that you have to practice. It's not, you don't wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to put myself first, especially as a woman who has all these other life demands, on my back. It's literally a daily choice and a daily decision to put myself first.
Okay. So let's walk through that. Why is that so important right now for you?
So again, as a woman, it's not something that comes easily. It's not something that necessarily comes naturally to me. I it's let me make sure that I take care of the kids. Let me make sure that my husband's good. Let me make sure that these people at work might need me, or my parents need something. My sibling. It's always there's never a shortage of people that need my time, my attention, my any resources that I have, my energy. There's never a shortage of that. But I have learned that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You just simply cannot. So it's really important that I'm intentional about refilling my cup on a daily basis. Even if refilling my cup is something as small as my morning workouts, right? I get up and I work out before my son gets up, before my husband gets up. I'm the first one up. I don't want to wake up that early. But I know that that is the time that I have available to me, that I can just have that time to myself and focus on myself and the things that I need in order for me to be happy and healthy.
So let's walk through like some of those self prioritizations. You said waking up early to work out. What are other things that you have to be mindful of putting into your schedule so that you do take care of yourself, so you fill your cup up? What does that look like?
So I also have do monthly massages, which is wonderful. And it sounds like a luxury, but at the same time, I work out every day, as I mentioned, right? So it's kind of like a reward for myself. Like, you have been treating your body well. So now let's, go an extra step and do it in a fun way. So monthly massages is another thing that I do in order to prioritize myself. I'm also really intentional about scheduling, as I said, things that make me happy and things that contribute to my health. So, date nights, I do once a month date nights with my husband. I do some sort of activity specifically with my son, like something specifically kid friendly, whether he wants to see a movie or he wants to go to some sort of event. So I make sure that time is cut out. Same thing with my friends. I try to schedule something once a month with my friends, and as you get older in age, scheduling something once a month is like actually pretty frequent. I try to get caught up with some of my friends or family. So just kind of refilling all those different cups, whether it is my social cup, whether it is also like I'm a Christian. I'm very firm in my relationship with God, so I also make sure that every day I do some sort of meditation or devotion, like something that brings me closer to my relationship with God as well.
You've used the word scheduling a couple times. So are you planning? Is it like a weekly planning? Like, are you sitting down and like thinking of all these cups you need to fill up and like making sure? I don't know. I envision you sitting down somewhere on a Sunday or a Monday. You're looking at all the different things you need to do. You've got a calendar open. You're plugging them in. But walk us through, like, what is that? How do you make sure these things get done? Because as you've said a couple times, it's so easy to let your husband, your child, your clients. I mean, I've got a wife. I watch her all the time. It's so easy just to see like let the whirlwind of the day take you away. So how do you become intentional about getting these things done? What's that practice look like?
So it depends on what it is. So, like for the massage, for example, that I have that set up automatically, right? So it like automatically comes out of my account every month. And then before I leave my last session, I schedule for the next session. So it's like it's already scheduled, it's on there. I know, at least a month ahead of time because sometimes I'll do a couple months ahead of time. And then it also puts me in a position where I can't just flake out because it's already scheduled, I already paid for it. So like I'm gonna be there. So something like that. In terms of my workouts, it's the same time pretty much every day, first thing in the morning. So I don't too much have to like schedule that out in terms of writing it down, but it's kind of a mental note that this is kind of what I do the weekdays during the mornings, things like that. Things like let's see what else. Oh, the time with my friends, my family, my husband, things like that. In a perfect world, I would schedule that ahead of time. I'm not there yet, but it's more like, wait a minute, we haven't done anything this month. Let's go ahead and get something on the books. Let's get something scheduled. Let's get a sitter, things like that. So it's just kind of I'm kind of aware, and I think part of the reason why I'm so aware is because I've been so intentional about this for so long. I know when one of those cups are kind of running low. Like I can tell when one of those cups are running low. I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't get anything scheduled, or I haven't done anything with my son. So maybe that connection doesn't quite feel as strong. So I'm like, you know what, let's have a date night. Let me take him somewhere and let's kind of connect and do something together.
So how long have you been practicing this particular habit? Because I have to imagine, just based on the way you've described your journey, this wasn't always part of your identity. There it sounds like there was probably a time in the past where maybe not all of these things, but some of these things, maybe even like the gym, they weren't registering with you. So when did you, I don't know, find a renewed love for self-prioritization?
I would say so. I started to realize the importance of self prioritization when during the process of me losing those 100 pounds, right? Because I initially did not credit self prioritization. I initially credited, well, I worked out more and I ate better, and that's how that happened. But then I started to really think about it, right? So when people started asking for coaching and things like that, I'm like, I can give them this strategy, but like, that's not it. Like, that's not how I did it. Like, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So then I started to have to unpack and figure out, what exactly did I do? Because as a coach, you have to give someone your framework, but if you don't have a framework, you can't give it to them. So, I'm in the process of kind of figuring out what that looked like for me. And I realized, like, I was intentional without being intentional. I was being intentional about putting myself first. Like, that's really the thing that really helped catapult my success on this journey, is realizing that I have to, in order for me to be a better mother, in order for me to be a better wife, employee, entrepreneur, whatever, I have to be okay. So I realized that, and that is kind of, and I'm more and more intentional each time, right? Like, so every year I'm more and more intentional. So about like scheduling these things within my relationships, that is new as of like last year. So I've probably been doing that about a year. But in terms of the exercising and the eating better and being intentional about those things, and really making sure those cups are filled, that's been going on for a couple years now.
I love the fact that, I mean, I love the idea of, if you can't pour from an empty cup. I'm very big on that concept, and I think for the people out there that are very people pleasing, I think in hindsight, it makes so much sense of, like, even if you want to please people, you want to be a better wife, you want to be a better mother, you want to be a better coach, which I think even for the people that take self prioritization and put it on the back burner, I think if you can change your perspective or your relationship purely just to that statement, you start to realize, and I tell my wife this all the time, I was like, you just figure out whatever it is you need to do to be at 100%, because like, if you're not at 100%, that just means we don't get 100%. It just means our
Mhm.
boys don't get 100%. And I know you want to give 100%, so you do have to take a break from all this busyness, if you will, and go do the things that make you happy, whatever that may be: a walk, a spa day, the gym, going grocery shopping to buy some good food, like whatever it may be. And if you do that well, then every other thing that you do in your life, you do it better.
Yep.
I'm curious, and maybe step a little bit into the coaching, like, is that a hard concept for people to wrap their brain around? Like the idea of like self prioritization. Yeah, well, like, what's your experience with that with like clients?
So I wouldn't say that the concept is hard. I will say that the practice and implementation
Okay.
is where things get tricky. Because when you're so used to doing something your entire life, and then you just switch it up and do things a different way, it's going to take time. So again, back to that kind of habit formation. It takes time to break the old habit of people pleasing and not upholding your boundaries, and to switch it to, okay, these are my boundaries, and this is when I'm done, because I know that I need to refill my cup. So again, people are usually on board with the concept. It's just the actually doing it that takes time and takes practice and takes repetition.
I love the fact that you use the self prioritization. It's actually the first time I've heard it on this podcast. When you first said it, I was thinking, I was like, well, why didn't you just say self care? But it seems like, and I'll let you fill in the blank. It seems like I feel like I understand why you didn't just say self care and you said self prioritization, but maybe make the distinguishing difference. Why did you say self prioritization versus just self care?
So self care is a word that we talk about a lot. And when we refer to self care, a lot of times we think about the massages and the pedicures and the, spending time by yourself and the reading and taking walks. And it's all like that cutesy sort of stuff. And it is important, right? All those things are definitely important, because you do need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. But here's the thing is, like, a lot of times that stuff happens and it doesn't happen on the forefront. It happens afterwards, right? So I'm burnt out. So now I need to practice self care.
Mm.
I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, so now I need a break. As opposed to with self-prioritization, you're coming in the beginning and you're saying, "You know what? I am going to make sure again that my cup is filled so then the overflow can go to those people that I love."
You mentioned something, maybe a final question on this particular topic. You had mentioned you can sort of sense when one of these cups is low. I think when I think of like how I self-prioritize, and I'm curious on your perspective on this. I'm very intentional on my birthday every year of like, what do I want this next year to look like? And if you're not capable of going out a year, go out a quarter or a month, or just keep drawing it back until it isn't overwhelming. But I'll look at a year and sort of set things into motion, and then I'll plan things out on a calendar, and I just make them just reoccurring. So, like, whether it's a
Mhm.
run or it's an exercise, you said it sort of with your massage of how you won't leave until you get the next one scheduled. Because I recognize, like, the more energy I have to put into like these thoughts as to like, well, when is the next, like, I just follow my calendar. Like, I'm intentional on the year. I do weekly planning on the week, at which point I'll do a variety of things from a financial balance to, my kids activities to all the things that I need to do. I even put like, I'm big on nutrition right now, so I'm even putting like when I should be having a recovery shake or something like that. But point is, like, I put it on a calendar, and then I mindlessly just follow my calendar for the next 6 days, 7 days. Like, it's just like it's the best strategy. So I don't have to, in the middle of a week, be like, "Well, did I get this done?" It's like I spend time in a moment, I write down, "Hey, friends, family," whatever those domains of your life are, and then I just put them on a calendar. And it may not feel glorious. I have to like schedule a date night with my wife, but if I don't do it that way, I mean, let's be honest, like, life is just so busy, it just gets rolled over. So you mentioned that I don't know, I sort of got the sense that you have this intuitive, a cup is low, but is it just that? Is there, I mean, are you just tapping into your intuitive of like where you need to focus? Or I don't know, it feels like there's a lot that you've got going on, and that, like, I don't know if you're resting completely on just an intuition, or if there's more, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but a more intention of like scheduling things out in advance so that you can sort of free up all those open loops in your brain, I guess. Like,
So that's goals for me. I'm not there yet.
okay.
It's definitely my intention to get things planned out as far in advance as possible. It just doesn't always work out like that. And things come up, you may or may not be able to get a sitter. Things just happen. So for the most part, it is more so it's part intuition, but it's part like being aware of like what I did last, right? So like I'm aware of like, okay, we did have a date night or we didn't have a date night. I did spend time with friends or I didn't spend time with friends. So like being aware of like what previously occurred and then trying to be more proactive about what needs to happen. So I wouldn't say it definitely isn't months in advance, definitely isn't a year in advance, but I try to have kind of a mental playbook of what next month needs to look like.
Okay. Yeah, and I think now that I think of the spirit behind the question, I'm thinking of all those people that aren't as far along. And you've kind of mentioned it a couple times. There's like phases, right? It's like you're slowly stacking these habits, and they have this compound effect. But it starts off slow, and maybe at one point it's just, hey, I just need to be more intentional with the grocery shop, and then it's okay. Well, then how do I layer in a little bit of food prep on a Sunday, and then it's like, how do I layer, and it slowly builds up over time. And I'm thinking of the person that's like, yes, I want to be present with my husband or wife, and I want to be there for my children, and I want to go to the gym, and I want to do all this. And it's like, how do they start to capture these things and start to weave them into their schedule? But I think what I'm taking away from you, and although you didn't say it quite this way, is start small, pick a thing, and if you can get it into the calendar, be as disciplined as you can, but also recognize that there might be some flexibility that's needed on a day in, day out. I think I've read some stuff on, like, have the grace to like accept that doesn't always go according to plan, and like try to remove some of that non-judgmentalness. And then like over time, the discipline and the habit sort of cements itself, and then you can layer in the next one and the next one. Is that more or less like the path?
Absolutely. Absolutely, start small. You don't have to do everything all at once. And then the other thing is too is when we're talking about self-prioritization, we're talking about filling your cup. that's a positive thing, right? So you're going to get great, you're going to feel great, you're going to be refilled, rejuvenated, like all of these things. So um, when you have that positive reinforcement, right? So like I did this thing, right? I scheduled it, I did the thing, now I feel great, my cup is refilled. You're more likely to do that again. So you're more likely to say, okay, so what's the next thing I can do to help me feel good or to help refill one of my cups?
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's pivot over. I'm so curious where we're going to head with this because as we started off this podcast, it's mindsets are so powerful, and a lot of other podcast people have pointed out like the mind really precedes the actions in a lot of ways. Like you've got to have the clarity of what you're trying to accomplish, define it before you can design it, if you will. Certainly before you can live it. But in a similar vein, is there a particular mindset for you right now that contributes more to your mental health, your well-being, your overall success?
Yes. I would say that the number one thing when it comes to mindset for me is a phrase that I use often: progress, not perfection.
Mm, I like that. Abby DeGraff, I had her on. I think she was episode 4. She also had that one. So give us your take. Why progress over perfection?
Because we fall short, and just as you mentioned, like, grace is so important. We have a tendency to throw out and give grace to everybody who, everybody in the world, but when it comes to ourselves, we're often a lot harder on ourselves. We're more critical, we have higher expectations, and sometimes it's not realistic. Like, it simply isn't realistic, and I think it's okay to not always hit the mark. Like, as long as you're striving towards it, it's okay if you didn't hit it. Because what that means is that you didn't hit it yet,
Mm,
right? That doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you're a horrible person. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means it hasn't happened yet. But you are making progress and you're working towards it, which continues to keep you motivated and keep you working towards the prize.
measure the gain, not the gap, as they say. So give me an example. Where does progress over perfection? Can you give me a recent example of like what has come up in your life where it wasn't perfection, but you were making steps? What's an example for you?
Okay, so a really recent thing is I had these big plans for, the beginning of the year. I'm like, because I took a couple weeks off of social media at the end of December, and I'm like, I'm gonna take this time and I'm gonna like plan my entire life for the year, and I'm gonna be like good to go on the first. I'm gonna hit the ground running. It didn't work like that. It did not at all work like that. But I did get some things planned, and I got, drafted some emails. Like, I did a lot of things. Reconnected with my family, and even though I did not walk out of December with my full plan for 2024, I don't have a full, mapped out content strategy for the next year or anything like that, but I feel refreshed, I feel renewed, I feel creative again, which is always great. And also I do have a general direction of where I want to see my business go in 2024. So I did make progress. Sometimes I think we feel like if we didn't hit the mark, like we say, oh, I procrastinated, or I failed, I wasn't productive, things like that. But the truth is I was productive, but productivity just looked different in the season, and that's okay.
In the moment where you are, I guess, aware that you didn't hit perfection, like in that moment, there's a lot of judgment that comes up. H- how long at this point? How long does that judgment stay with you? Because I think like I understand the concept of progress, not perfection, and I struggle with this. I mean, to be honest with you, this comes up a lot in this podcast because I think so many people, to your point, have high expectations for themselves, and so I think we all can like in hindsight look back and be like, well, it didn't go according to plan, but in the moment where you just recognize you did not hit the mark, how long is that judgment staying with you? That self criticism, the doubt, the or are you able to bounce through that really quickly? What's that look like for you at in the moment?
It's fairly fast at this point. It wasn't always
Okay.
like that. But again, with that kind of practice and repetition, it's fairly fast. I do have the thoughts, and I want to make that very clear. I think some people think because I'm a mindset coach or because I have a background in mental health that I don't experience negative thoughts or, intrusive thoughts or limiting beliefs. I do 100% experience those. But one, I'm able to recognize them for what they are very quickly. And I'm like, nope, that's not truth. That's a limiting belief. Oh, that's not truth. That's just my mind kind of telling me, things that are untrue. I'm able to recognize those things. And then once I'm able to recognize them, I'm pretty much able to cycle through them pretty quickly. Because it goes back to that kind of, once you identify what it is, it's easier for you to kind of know what to do with it.
When you were first, I guess, developing this particular mindset, was it like I've seen people with like they have braces, like a bracelets on, or a mantra that they do, or I don't know, a quote on the wall, or like something that sort of helps trigger this mindset as a reminder. I've got like a bunch of quotes on my wall. I'm constantly triggering myself. But when you were first developing this, was there anything specific you used to sort of jumpstart that thought process of progress, not perfection?
Yes, I'm big. I don't do it as much anymore, but I used to be really big on sticky notes. So you just write stuff on sticky notes, put them anywhere that you're going to see them, whether it's in the car, whether it's on your mirror, whether it's on your wall, like wherever you need to put it to see it. So that was really helpful. Also, when I first started my Instagram, I kind of used it as a journal. Like
Mm.
I wasn't trying to be anyone, so I was just posting my own stuff. And a lot of times I would say things like that to my essentially to myself, but publicly, and to kind of remind myself that, to keep going, and you got this, and you're not a failure, and just keep ticking away.
Let me ask one more question on this mindset because this comes up a lot as well. When we bring up the concept of progress, not perfection, I think some people have said, well, and I'll play devil's advocate here, so I'm going to go a little extreme. Like, is that in any way a cop out for not being as disciplined or as committed to a specific outcome? Like, Tony Robbins got a great quote that it's like, if you want to take the island, you burn the boat. And it's sort of this concept of like, whatever it takes to achieve it, it's either all or nothing mentality. Is there any part of progress that not perfection that I don't know that makes you think that like if I didn't have this perfectionist type mindset in some way, even if you're recovering from it, that you wouldn't have been able to achieve the level of success that you've had in your life? Is there any sort of like counterbalancing thought that it's like, yeah, progress, not perfection, but we can still aspire for perfection because it's the aspiration of perfection that allows me to be an entrepreneur, be a phenomenal wife, be a phenomenal mother, and stuff like that. Like, is there any part of that that like counterbalance that mindset, if you will?
I can't say that I've ever been in pursuit of perfection. I mean, there's been times that, like, I guess subconsciously, yes, I've most definitely subconsciously been in pursuit of perfection. Yes, I've definitely been in pursuit of perfection, but that was not intentional. But I will say that more important to me than perfection is excellence. Like, I'd rather strive for excellence than strive for perfection. Because excellence isn't about hitting everything on the tee. It's giving your best effort. It's putting your best foot forward. It's being intentional about the actions that you take. To me, that's what excellence is. So while I do understand why some people do strive for perfection and that helps them in their journey, I think that maybe that might be a personality difference.
Okay.
Because pretty much I prefer balance than perfection. Like, balance is more important to me at this point in my life.
I like that. I like that. Excellence. Let me ask you this as a final question, Aujile. And so much of this has been focused on you as an individual, but I recognize like we're all part of this larger collective, right? Whether it's the community, and I think there's 8 billion of us on this planet. So if you could wave a wand and you could distill down some habit or mindset on all of humanity, so everybody would embrace this mindset or habit, is there one in particular that you think would nudge all of us in a more loving and kind direction as a species?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I would say that as a species, if we focus more on self improvement, I would say is if you wake up every day with the mindset and the efforts to become a better version of you than you were yesterday. That is something that I 100% hands down believe would significantly improve the community, each and every person that's a part of it.
Why? Why'd you say that?
So, a couple reasons. One, if you're striving to be a better version of you than you were yesterday, the only way you can do that is by self reflecting on who you were yesterday. Right. And I feel like self reflection is something that a lot of people in society lack. We just carry on and kind of in this auto mode of just doing what we do without taking a moment to sit back and ask ourselves why. Right. So it would kind of, so that forces self reflection. And then also, if you're being a better, like if you're being intentional about being a better you, if all of us are better people, then of course we're better for each other, right? If we're better versions of us, we can be, I can treat you better, you can treat me better. We would be kinder, we would be more loving. It's just about being a better version of you. Even if it's just like 1% better than you were yesterday, like that's fine. Again, it's about that progress and not perfection. You just want to be a better version.
I love that. I've asked this question. This will be the 40th episode. I think a lot about this is like we're all out there and we all have a responsibility. I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with you. If I was to answer the question, it would absolutely be self improvement. For a lot of the same reasons on your last point, there is that I think when you really take the time to become a better version of yourself, you have to put in the hard work. And the hard work is it's a lot of asking yourself some tough questions. It's choosing your heart, right? It's all of that. It's the sleep, it's the health, it's the way you communicate with other people. And I think as you go through that journey, you recognize like it's not easy being a human. It is tough. It is emotional. It is tough. But I also think like through that process, you strip down the essence of what it means to be a human, and you start to move away from it's not the beach house and the Bentley and the gold bars. It is a moment in time with your child or your husband or all of that. And I think when you really get to that essence, you start to have this appreciation and this level of empathy of like, God, I know how hard it is for me, Aujile. Like, I can only imagine how hard it is for you and how hard it is for that other person who I don't know. And I think there's a level of empathy that's really starts to radiate out. And I think that in itself, if you can develop that in some way, shape, or form, you start to just treat other people kinder because you don't know what they are going through. But you
Mhm.
know what you've gone through and you recognize like we all have gone through a lot. So I love your answer
Yeah.
on that. Completely resonate with that. Where can people go to learn more about you? Where's the right place to send them?
So Instagram is my primary home. My personal Instagram is Journey to Wonderland, and my business Instagram is Eat.Cleanish.
Love it. Ajale, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you. I love learning more about it. I felt like I could ask you a bunch more questions. But thanks so much and for sharing a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.